Hey there, fellow knowledge seekers. It's funny how sometimes the things we think we know well turn out to have these whole hidden depths to them. Like, did you know that the 12 signs of the Western Zodiac, like being a Taurus or a Scorpio, whatever,
Yeah.
that system actually originated in ancient Babylon like over 2,000 years ago? It's kind of mind-blowing how these ancient systems still have such a hold on us today. And speaking of ancient systems, today we're taking a deep dive into one that's even older and I'd argue even more fascinating. The Chinese zodiac.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about a system that dates back to the Shang dynasty, which is around 1500 BC. What's really interesting is that it's not just about those 12 animals we often associate with the Chinese zodiac, right? There's a whole intricate system of timekeeping behind it.
Right, yeah. For those of us who grew up with, like, horoscopes in the newspaper,
Hmm.
you know, checking our daily forecast or whatever this is, like discovering a whole new dimension to something we thought we knew. It's like finding a hidden room in a familiar house. And to guide us through this exploration, we're drawing insights from an interview with Professor John Steele from Brown University. He's like a leading expert in ancient astronomy and lunar calendars, so I think we're in good hands.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Professor Steele really emphasizes that the Chinese zodiac it isn't actually a zodiac in the astronomical sense like the Western zodiac is. It's not about constellations or the sun's path through the sky or anything like that. Instead, it's a 12-year cycle, with each year being represented by a different animal.
Okay, so we've got these 12 animal signs. That's what most people think of when you're Chinese zodiac, right?
Mm.
But you mentioned a whole system of timekeeping. What's that about?
So the Chinese zodiac is based on a complex interplay of two cycles, basically. The 12 earthly branches, which are those familiar animal signs, and the 10 heavenly stems. And these two cycles, they run in parallel, creating a 60-year cycle overall.
Oh, wow, a 60-year cycle. It's pretty amazing. So, like, you could actually calculate the Chinese zodiac sign of someone born 60 years ago, and it would be the same as someone born today.
Exactly. That's it. And this system, it's been ticking like clockwork for centuries now. It gives us this incredible glimpse into how ancient people understood time and cycles and all of that. And here's where it's even more fascinating. Each of these 12 earthly branches, it's not just associated with an animal, it's also associated with directions, specific hours of the day, and elements too.
Elements. I thought those were more of a Western concept, like earth, air, fire, and water, that kind of thing.
Right. That's a pretty common misconception, actually. Professor Steele, he points out that the Chinese system, it uses 5 phases: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And these are more about states of being or transformation, not like fundamental elements in the way Western thought usually thinks of them?
So it's not just about, like, fixed categories, but about change and flow and all that. Interesting.
Exactly. It's a much more dynamic way of understanding the world. And this actually ties into the characteristics that are associated with each animal sign, too. Similar to the Western zodiac, each animal is believed to have certain strengths and weaknesses, but Professor Steele cautions against taking like a hierarchical view of it.
So it's not about which animal is better than another or anything like that?
Yeah, no, not at all. It's more about understanding the nuances of each sign and recognizing that every animal possesses like unique qualities.
Hmm. I see. This is making me think about how our own understanding of time and cycles might influence how we see the world and ourselves and everything, really. It's like a
Yeah.
different lens for understanding things.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And speaking of different lenses, let's dive into one of the most captivating parts of the Chinese zodiac, the origin myth of the Great Race.
Oh, yeah. The Jade Emperor's race to determine the order of the animals? That's a great story. It's a story filled with trickery and determination, and even a bit of heartbreak, especially for the cat. Poor cat. But before we get into that, I'm curious about how this whole system relates to the Chinese New Year celebration.
Well, the Chinese New Year, it's deeply rooted in the lunisolar calendar, which is a calendar that follows the cycles of both the moon and the sun. And the start of the new year is determined by the second new moon that occurs after the winter solstice.
Oh, okay, so we're talking some serious astronomical calculations here.
Absolutely. Imagine the ancient astronomers, meticulously charting the movements of the sun and the moon to determine the precise start of the new year. It was a real testament to their deep understanding of the cosmos.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that even in ancient times, people were fascinated by these cosmic cycles and how they impact our lives. So did they have a way to, like, predict these cycles accurately back then?
They did. The court astronomers, they produced these detailed almanacs, almost like astronomical guidebooks that predicted eclipses, planetary movements, and of course, the start of the new year.
So they had like a cosmic cheat sheet, basically.
Yeah, you could say that. And presenting these almanacs to the emperor, it was a major event. It wasn't just about practicality. It was about demonstrating harmony between heaven and earth. It symbolized the emperor's role as a mediator between the cosmic and earthly realms.
Wow, it sounds like time and the cosmos and leadership were all intertwined in a fascinating way back then.
Precisely. And this influence wasn't confined to just China's borders either. The Chinese calendar and the Zodiac, it spread throughout East Asia, influencing Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and more.
So we're talking about cultural exchange on like a grand scale. But did these other cultures just adopt the Chinese zodiac like wholesale? Or do they change things up?
So, while they definitely embraced the overall system, they also incorporated local variations, which actually reflects the adaptability of Chinese thought in general. For instance, different animals might be substituted in some regions, and unique interpretations emerged over time. It's like a recipe that's passed down through generations, but each family adds their own special twist.
Hmm. That's a great analogy. It shows how these ancient systems can evolve and adapt while still retaining their core essence. But speaking of adaptations, there's another fascinating twist to this story that might surprise our listeners. It involves the Western zodiac, which, originated in ancient Babylon, making its way into China.
Ah, yes. The arrival of the Babylonian zodiac in China, mainly through Buddhism around the 4th or 5th centuries AD, it adds a whole new layer of complexity to our story.
Wait, so we've got two zodiac systems mingling in China now. Talk about a cultural collision.
Exactly. And you know what? Instead of rejecting this foreign system, the Chinese scholars, they actually attempted to harmonize the two. They renamed signs, drew connections between the systems, and basically tried to find ways to make them work together.
That's incredible. It shows a real openness to new ideas while still valuing their own traditions.
Precisely. And this process, it reveals something really crucial about the Chinese approach to knowledge. It's not about rigid adherence to just one system, but about finding ways to accommodate new information and perspectives.
It's like saying, hey, let's see what this new system has to offer and explore how it can enrich our understanding, right? That's a pretty refreshing perspective, if you ask me.
It is, and this openness to new ideas, while remaining grounded in their own traditions, it's a recurring theme in Chinese intellectual history, really.
That's fascinating. So we've talked about how the Western zodiac made its way into China, but did the Chinese zodiac ever travel in the other direction, like westward?
There's definitely evidence of some diffusion, particularly through the Islamic world. During the Tang Dynasty, there was a lot of interaction between Chinese and Islamic astronomers. They even had separate bureaus of astronomy that were working side by side, comparing calculations and methods and things like that.
Wow, that's incredible. I never knew that. So through this exchange, did elements of the Chinese zodiac start popping up in other parts of the world?
Yes, we start to see aspects of the Chinese zodiac, especially the visual imagery of the animals appearing in Persian and Islamic art and texts.
So it wasn't just abstract concepts being exchanged, but like the imagery itself was crossing borders.
Exactly. Cultural exchange is rarely a one-way street, right? It's a back and forth sharing of ideas and perspectives that enriches both sides.
Mhm.
And this exchange really highlights the power of these systems to transcend cultural boundaries.
Yeah, I see that. We've been talking a lot about astronomy and cultural exchange, but there's another element that keeps popping up in our conversation: religion. What role does religion play in the story of the Chinese zodiac?
Well, religion in China is this complex tapestry, really, with Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism often interwoven together. Professor Steele, he emphasizes that it's not about choosing one exclusive faith, it's about drawing from different traditions and finding a balance.
Right, so the Chinese zodiac, especially in relation to the New Year festivities, it's embedded in this multifaceted religious landscape.
Precisely. Rituals, myths, even the emperor's role in ensuring calendar accuracy, they all connect to these broader religious beliefs in some way.
It makes you realize that the Chinese zodiac isn't just a fun way to, predict your personality or your compatibility with others, right?
Right.
It's tied to something much larger, something that connects people to the cosmos, to their ancestors, to a sense of order and harmony.
Beautifully put. It really highlights the multifaceted nature of the Chinese zodiac. It's simultaneously practical, philosophical, and spiritual all at once, and it's this richness and depth that has allowed it to endure for millennia.
Speaking of endurance, it's pretty remarkable how the Chinese zodiac has survived so many changes and upheavals over the centuries. What do you think is like the secret to its longevity?
Professor Steele draws a parallel to other enduring systems we have, like the 7-day week or the 360-degree circle. These are ideas that are so fundamental, so deeply woven into our understanding of the world, that they transcend cultural boundaries and historical shifts.
Hmm. It's like they tap into something universal, something that resonates with the human experience, regardless of time or place.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the secret to the Chinese zodiac's enduring appeal. It provides a framework for understanding time, the cosmos, and ourselves, a framework that continues to resonate with people even today.
And it's not just in China either, right? The Chinese zodiac has captivated people all over the world, but why? What is it about this system with its animal symbols and its focus on cycles and cosmic connections that continues to fascinate us centuries later? That's something we'll explore, well, right now. No need for a break when the conversation's this good.
Yeah. It's fascinating, when the Western zodiac came to China, they weren't resistant to it at all. Instead, they kind of saw it as another layer of meaning, another tool to help understand the world.
It's almost like they were thinking, hey, the more, the merrier.
Yeah.
It's a very different approach than we might expect,
It
right?
really is. And you have to remember, astrology, whether it's Western or Chinese, it's all about finding those correlations and patterns. So adding in another system, even one that had different origins and symbolism, it just gave them more opportunities for interpretation and making connections.
That makes sense.
Mm.
But how did they actually, like, integrate the Western zodiac?
Yeah.
Did they just try to map the Western signs directly onto the Chinese system?
It wasn't quite that simple. It was more like this fascinating process of translation and adaptation. Sometimes they used the existing Chinese names for the 12 branches to represent the Western signs, but other times they tried to translate the Babylonian names or find Chinese equivalents based on the symbolism.
So they were really trying to find ways to make the two systems kind of speak to each other. Did they run into any roadblocks during that process?
Oh, they did. Professor Steele, he points out that certain Babylonian concepts, those rooted in their specific mythology, they didn't have direct counterparts in Chinese culture. Like trying to find a Chinese equivalent for a Babylonian archer god like Sagittarius, that must have been a challenge.
I can imagine. It sounds like they had to get pretty creative.
Exactly. It was like this cultural negotiation in a way, finding ways to bridge these different worldviews. And this process, it reveals something interesting about the Chinese approach to knowledge, I think. It's not about rigidly sticking to just one system. It's about being open to new information and new perspectives and seeing how it all fits together.
It's a much more inclusive way of thinking about things, for sure. That's a pretty refreshing perspective.
It is. And this openness to new ideas, while still remaining grounded in their own traditions, it's something that pops up again and again throughout Chinese intellectual history.
Okay, so we've talked about how the Western zodiac came into China, but did the Chinese zodiac ever go the other way, like westward?
There's definitely evidence of some diffusion, especially through the Islamic world. During the Tang Dynasty, there was a lot of interaction happening between Chinese and Islamic astronomers. They even had separate bureaus of astronomy working side by side, comparing their calculations and their methods and all of that.
Wow, really? That's amazing. So through that exchange, did elements of the Chinese zodiac start showing up in other parts of the world?
Yes, we see things like the visual imagery of the animals, the rat, the ox, the tiger, and all that. They start appearing in Persian and Islamic art and texts.
So it wasn't just the abstract ideas, but like the actual imagery was crossing borders.
Exactly. Cultural exchange, it's rarely just a one-way street, right? It's more like this back and forth sharing of ideas and perspectives. And in the end, both sides end up getting enriched by it. And this particular exchange, it highlights how powerful these systems can be. They transcend cultural boundaries.
We've talked a lot about astronomy and this cultural exchange happening, but there's another element that keeps popping up in our conversation: religion. What role does religion play in the story of the Chinese zodiac?
Well, religion in China is pretty complex. It's more like this tapestry, with Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism all kind of interwoven together. Professor Steele emphasizes that it wasn't about choosing one faith to the exclusion of others. It was about drawing from different traditions and finding a balance.
Okay, so the Chinese zodiac, especially as it relates to the New Year festivities and all that, it's kind of embedded in this multifaceted religious landscape.
Precisely. The rituals, the myths, even the emperor's role in making sure the calendar was accurate, they all connect back to these broader religious beliefs in some way.
It makes you realize that the Chinese zodiac is not just a fun way to predict your personality or see if you're compatible with someone. It's tied to something much bigger. It's something that connects people to the cosmos, to their ancestors, to this sense of order and harmony in the world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It really highlights the multifaceted nature of the Chinese zodiac. It's practical, it's philosophical, it's spiritual all at the same time. And it's that richness and depth that has allowed it to survive for literally thousands of years.
Speaking of surviving, it's pretty remarkable how the Chinese zodiac has made it through so many changes and upheavals over the centuries. What do you think is the secret to its longevity?
Professor Steele, he draws a parallel to other enduring systems we have, like the 7-day week or the 360-degree circle. These are ideas that are so fundamental, so deeply woven into how we understand the world, that they just go beyond cultural boundaries and historical shifts.
It's like they're tapping into something universal, something that resonates with us as humans no matter where we are in time or place.
Exactly. And maybe that's the secret to the Chinese zodiac's appeal. It provides this framework for understanding time, the cosmos, and ourselves. A framework that people still connect with even today.
And it's not just people in China either. The Chinese zodiac, it's captivated people all over the world. But why is that? What is it about this system, with its animal symbols and this focus on cycles and cosmic connections, that continues to fascinate us centuries later?
Okay, so we've seen that the Chinese zodiac is not just some ancient thing from the past, right? It's a system that's still alive and well, and people all over the world are still fascinated by it. But what is it about this system that's so appealing, even after all this time? What's the secret, do you think?
Well, I think it speaks to this very human need we all have for connection. We want to belong, to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, whether that's the cosmos or history or some kind of shared cultural heritage. We're always trying to make sense of our place in the world, in the grand scheme of things. It's like we're looking for those threads that connect us all, right?
Yeah.
Those patterns that make us feel like we're part of something larger than our everyday lives. Yeah.
Exactly. And the Chinese zodiac, with its cycles and its rich symbolism, it gives us a framework to understand those connections, I think. It provides a sense of order, a sense of predictability in a world that can feel chaotic and uncertain a lot of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's comforting to think that even though life can be unpredictable, there's this bigger rhythm happening, this cosmic dance we're all part of.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And within that dance, the animals of the Chinese zodiac, they give us these archetypes that we can relate to. We see ourselves in the cleverness of the rat, the diligence of the ox, the passion of the tiger, the artistry of the dragon. These animal symbols, they tap into something universal about being human, which is probably why they appeal to people from all over the world, no matter what their background is.
It's like we have this shared language, a way to connect across cultures and across time. And it's fun, too. I mean, who doesn't enjoy reading their horoscope and seeing if it sounds like them, right?
Yeah.
There's this playful curiosity, this desire to understand ourselves and the people around us better.
Absolutely. It's not about taking it literally, of course. It's more about exploring different sides of ourselves and our relationships. The Chinese zodiac can be a way to start a conversation, or a way to reflect on things and learn more about yourself. And maybe, just maybe, it gives us a little bit of hope, too. This idea that we're all part of this huge cosmic cycle, that our lives are woven into the fabric of time, that can be a very comforting thought, especially when things feel uncertain.
I think you've really hit on something there. The Chinese zodiac, with its cycles and animals and elements, it offers a way for us to connect with a cosmos, with history, and with each other. It's a testament to human ingenuity and how fascinated we are by time and fate.
Well said. And the fact that we're still talking about it today, thousands of years later, that says a lot about its power. It's a system that keeps evolving, keeps adapting, keeps finding new meaning for each generation.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the Chinese zodiac with you today. We've uncovered so much more than just animal signs and personality traits, haven't we? We've gone into ancient astronomy, cultural exchange, philosophy, even spiritual connections. What stands out to you as the biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's the reminder that these systems of timekeeping, they're so much more than just calendars. They reflect our culture, our beliefs, our whole relationship with the universe. And the tiny zodiac, it's such a beautiful example of that. It shows how ingenious and adaptable humans are and how fascinated we are by the mysteries of time and fate.
That's beautifully put. We started by talking about how even the Western zodiac comes from ancient Babylon. And now we've come full circle to see how these systems of timekeeping, while they come from specific cultures and traditions, they really speak to something universal about the human experience. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Chinese zodiac, be sure to subscribe to the deep dive for more explorations of fascinating topics from history, science, and culture. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring the wonders of the world around us.